Welcome to Wednesday. Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony. He's Ron. We have lots to uncover today, Ron. We have obviously the DNC underway, the most incredible amount of energy and excitement for all the speakers, some of which I would suggest are the superstars of American politics. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. We have Donald Trump making his appearance at his first rally right now since his assassination attempt. He's standing behind bulletproof glass. We'll talk about that in just a little bit as well. But we do have some breaking stories that I think that we should start with. And let's talk about RFK Jr. first, because he really is somebody who we talk about with from a distance because he's nuts. Just tell us this exclusive news that has been dropped today, reported by the Gateway Pundit.
Right. I've been tracking this for a while now, and we kind of have to rewind real quick. I'll go through the real quick history of it, because the whole idea of RFK running for president really started a couple of years ago when he appeared on Steve Bannon's show. And Bannon put the idea in his head, I believe, where he said, you really should run against Biden in the Democratic primary. And I think, he's feeding the ego and the narcissism of RFK. And RFK is very similar to Trump in many ways. They're both serial adulterers, conspiracy theorists, narcissists, everything's about them. So they're very similar. And I think Bannon, who is very intuitive about sensing people's weaknesses and pushing their buttons, saw that he saw this is a guy very similar to Trump. I'm used to working Trump. And he put this idea in his head. And the whole point of it was that, I think from Bannon's angle, was to cause chaos within the Democratic Party, to have there be a contested primary, make Biden get out on the campaign trail early, spend money, all that. When that didn't pan out, RFK bails and runs as an independent. Whether Bannon had or the Trump campaign had anything to do with that, entirely possible. We don't know. So then, he's not getting any traction. He's not doing anything in the polls. Then when Biden drops out, what happens? One of the first things Trump does is call RFK. And because Trump knows, his internal polls show that most of RFK's votes, probably 70%, are coming from him. They're coming from people who may vote for Trump. Trump is well aware of that. And so Trump calls him. They have what's supposed to be a private call. Unfortunately, RFK's son records the call and puts it on social media, so it got leaked to the press.
And that was Trump talking immediately after the assassination attempt in a very energized fashion about the fact that he'd been shot, which contrasted the next day at the RNC. Correct. So there was that exclusive then. But then he says to him, okay, listen, I think there's room for you in my cabinet, right?
Yeah, he's basically like promising him a job if he'll drop out and endorse him. And RFK was kind of like hemmed and high, he didn't commit to anything. And so then that gets kind of set aside. Then what happens is we have Nicole Shanahan, his running mate, goes on a podcast a few days ago and says, well, we were kind of hoping to get 5%. So she kind of concedes. They both kind of give the game away all the time. She kind of concedes that they can't win, but that RFK's hope was if he could get 5%. See, what that does is that then makes you automatically a registered, certified, bona fide third party, to where in 2028 they wouldn't have to go through all this ballot stuff. They'd just automatically be on the ballot everywhere. So that's what they were kind of hoping to do. But it's pretty obvious now that they're not going to get even 5% in many places. So she says that, and she says, look, we've reached out to the Trump campaign and we're talking to them about getting a position and dropping out and endorsing him. She kind of gives that game away. I don't think she was really supposed to do that. We also got reporting that was not denied by RFK that they reached out to the Harris campaign and were looking for a similar deal. It seems pretty clear that he preferred to go to get a position in the Harris campaign. And he was trying to leverage what Trump was trying to do to get something from Harris. And the Harris campaign said, no way, we don't want anything to do with you, go away. So then he went running back to Trump. So then Gateway Pundit reported last night, and again, Gateway Pundit is not necessarily a reliable source, but for things kooky and conspiracy, they are. They have a lot of connections in that right-wing conspiracy universe. They reported that a source very close to RFK, which may possibly have been RFK himself, told them that he was going to drop out on Friday and endorse Trump in exchange for a position in the administration. Then reporting comes out this morning that RFK has scheduled an announcement of some kind on the future of his campaign in Friday in Phoenix, which also Trump just happens to be doing a rally Friday in Phoenix at the same time. So it seems very, very clear at this point that he is going to drop out. He's going to endorse Trump, and Trump is going to promise him some kind of job.
We should point out that RFK Jr. was polling before Kamala Harris got the nomination, or even the announcement of Joe Biden stepping down. He was polling at like 10%. Then it went down to 1%, now 5%. But the point is that he's not a winner. He's a lunatic. He also was an environmental lawyer. Aside from all of his crazy stuff about vaccinations, he was an environmental lawyer. If he signs up with Donald Trump, he is now effectively selling his entire soul to the devil and everything that he's ever cared about. I mean, it's not surprising, is it?
No, you make an excellent point. I mean, that was his entire career. I mean, those of us who are older remember RFK Jr. in the 80s and 90s as an environmental lawyer and a crusader.
Yeah.
And then, you know, he kind of, after he had all his personal problems and his ex-wife committed suicide and all of that, he kind of fell off the radar for a long time and kind of disappeared. And then he resurfaces as this, you know, COVID conspiracy guy in 2020. So the question is, how much of the old RFK, environmental lawyer RFK, does he still have in him? Because Trump has already said, and Trump has been asked about climate change multiple times, including recently. He says it's a hoax. It's not real. It doesn't exist. So I guess RFK will somehow justify that by saying, well, you know, he's just putting me in charge of public health, which is even more scary. And so I really have nothing to do with climate change. Or he'll say something along the lines of, well, Trump has agreed to listen to my ideas about climate change. Something along those lines. It's all phony and fake.
Well, everything that they do on that side is phony and fake. And in fact, you know, the way I would see it is that it would be great for RFK to join Trump's team. I mean, that, in terms of the politics of it, takes one lunatic, puts with another nut job into that section. And so it means that Harris is left with sanity and with fewer distractions.
Look, who are the RFK supporters? I know them well. Okay. The RFK supporters are the people that we saw in 2021 during when Biden put in all the mandates and COVID mandates and vax mandates, and all those people went nuts and they went into school board meetings and they did all kinds of, and there were the ivermectin people and all of this, people protesting hospitals and threatening doctors. These are the RFK voters. They're hardcore QAnon conspiracy theorists. So the question is, are they going to vote for Trump now if RFK is on his team? I'm very skeptical, okay, because I have seen amongst a lot of high-profile RFK supporters who have said, if you do this, we're out. We're not supporting you anymore.
Meaning that they won't vote.
They will not vote. They will not either not vote, or they will vote for a different third party, or even I've seen some of them say they will vote there for Harris.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that you're right. I think what it's going to do is it's going to mainstream voters, like those moderate, middle of the road voters, are going to move even more to Harris as a result of this. And I don't think Trump is going to pick up that many of the RFK nut jobs. And by the way, these are people that don't traditionally vote anyway, the RFK fringy conspiracy people. So I don't think that this is really going to benefit him very much. I know that some Democrats might panic, but I would say don't panic about this.
We should also not forget, you know, we always abbreviate his name, but ultimately he has only ever traded on the Kennedy name. And that's,
you know, I'm careful not to do that on social media. I will always put the junior, but you're right. A lot of people don't do that.
Yeah. And so, you know, the only thing he ever really had to offer was the Kennedy branding that is now, you know, generationally doesn't have much currency. And so he, outside of that, he is just a weird fringe conspiracy theorist who has caused all sorts of problems, not to mention the number of families that have failed to get their MMR jabs for their children because of his rhetoric. I mean, it's pretty nuts, and he is pretty nuts. And I just feel that this takes him out of the race. But I feel that his ego is such that he thinks he deserves power somewhere. And so if he's going to find it from anyone, he'll find it from Donald Trump, who is currently on the down, and therefore he thinks that if he can pick up a couple of million votes because of RFK, he'll put him on the team in the same way that he reached out to the far right when, in 2016 and got that vote, and the evangelicals, people that he didn't necessarily connect with, but he just needs the numbers.
And here's the other thing. This is not going to end well. There's no way that this is going to end well, because Trump does not like RFK, whatever he's pretending to say now. He doesn't like him. And by the way, just as we did with Vance, when, we brought out all those old statements from Vance trashing Trump, we're going to do the same thing here. We got lots of Trump statements trashing RFK in the can. Yeah. We got the reverse, RFK trashing Trump. There's all kinds of that stuff out there that we're ready to unload on Friday, assuming this happens, and it looks like it's going to. So it's just going to make them look like more hypocrites, more you'll do anything, you'll say anything, and to get elected. And when I say this is not going to end well, what I mean by that is whatever Trump is promising him, he won't give him. No. He won't deliver. And I don't know if RFK is stupid enough to trust Donald Trump on this point, but what's going to happen is, if somehow Trump wins, let's just entertain that possibility for hypothetical sake. He might be promising him like DHS secretary, but there's no way, because there's no way RFK could ever get a security clearance or ever get confirmed by the Senate with his background. He has so much stuff in his background. It's not possible. So he could never get confirmed to a cabinet position. So at that point, Trump will offer him something much further down in the food chain, or simply say to him, look, man, I tried, but I can't get you through the Senate. Sorry.
Let's take a look at some new reporting this morning that suggests that the Trump campaign has issued a letter signed by 50 Republicans denouncing Tim Walz for misrepresenting his military service. Now, apparently it has 29 misrepresentations about the service of the signers, including a false claim that Ronnie Jackson is a retired general. Tell us about this, because, you've been very much at the forefront of this reporting, Ron. What's the story?
This is the Trump campaign is just the gang that can't shoot straight, over and over again. They're just so incompetent. And that was reflected in the way that they ran their administration. It was the same thing. No one's qualified to be in the positions. They're flying by the seat of their pants. They're constantly making mistakes. And this is yet another example. So they get this big letter. This is their big moment, that they've worked on for like a week now. Is they're getting all these representatives, senators and House Republicans who are military vets. They contact all of them, and they ask them if they will sign on to this letter denouncing Walz for the supposed stolen valor claims that we've talked about many times. So not all of the Republican vets signed on to this letter, but most did. So they put this letter out, and then it has a number of stolen valor things in the letter that are not accurate. It lists 29 of them as being retired. Now being retired military, having that RET next to your name is a big deal to military guys. Like someone who just did 4 years and got out like me, we would never try and claim we were retired, because that's a big deal. That means you did 20, 25 years. You made it a career. Right. It's a big deal next to your name. They put retired next to 29 of these guys' names who are not retired, including people like Rick Scott, who did 29 months in the Navy, and they put retired next to his name. So that's just outrageous. Then they got Ronnie Jackson, who they put in the letter as a retired rear admiral, when 2 years ago he was busted down to captain for repeatedly being drunk on duty and berating subordinates and for misconduct. They got Troy Nels in there. Troy Nels has his stolen valor thing where he was wearing a combat action ribbon around Congress on his lapel pin for years when he wasn't supposed to. He wasn't entitled to it. And even after the Army issued a letter telling him to stop wearing it, he kept wearing it. So Troy Nels is on there. Now, I will say one guy, Tom Cotton, who in the past has represented himself as an Army Ranger, when in fact he was not. He went to Army Ranger school, but was never an Army Ranger. Interestingly enough, I looked for his name. He's not on there. So he was smart enough to know I got stolen valor issues of my own. don't put my name on this letter. But, you know, it just, and by the way, the Trump campaign, just before we came on air, has retracted it and said that they made a mistake and they blamed it on a staffer.
But what this does is it just goes to confirm that Republicans, MAGA Republicans, Trump staffers, Trump campaign officials, as well as Trump and Vance themselves, they are just terrible people who will do anything and say anything to get a few points from the other side. What is this kind of addiction with misinformation? They really don't care. I mean, it's a little bit like, you know, this announcement that Biden's impeachment is going to be forthcoming again that we've heard in the last couple of days. I mean, they just won't let it lie. And even after failing to get that off the ground before, and even now that Biden's not even going to be the president after January, this continuation, is it just trying to cause a kind of noise of disinformation that makes people think, oh, well, there's something dodgy about Democrats?
No, this is definitely, yeah, it's definitely a part of the plan. I don't think they make mistakes on their own, but they don't hesitate to take the barest allegation or piece of evidence, circumstantial evidence, whatever, smoking gun that leads to nowhere, not fact check it, and they run with it. That's their MO. That's always been their MO. And the problem with Democrats, quite honestly, is that they refuse to engage in that game. I'm not saying that Democrats should put out like fake stuff and do what they do, but the point is that they were always on offense and Democrats were always on defense. And nowhere was that illustrated better than in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, where she was just constantly debunking and correcting and no, this didn't happen and no, that's not true. And it's like, what we have learned since that time, Democrats, is we can't play that game. The best way to go at these guys is to go on offense against them, put them on defense, make them like I just did with that letter this morning and blew that up. Okay. They screw up. They put it out there. We backfoot them. Now they're issuing retractions. Now they're demanding that we take down our story. And it's like, hey, no, I'm not taking down my story. You screwed up. You made a mistake. You got to own it, because you know what? You're claiming that Walsh misspoke about something 15 years ago in his speech, and that's the whole basis of your letter. Now you put something in writing, and you're saying, oh, you can't use that against us. Well, no, Democrats, me especially, we're not playing that game anymore. We are going on offense. We are staying on offense, and we're going to make them defend things.
Yeah, well, we've certainly seen that in the last 48 hours at the DNC, with the Obamas not holding back. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's first go to Florida and Ron DeSantis. Now we're hearing that he's trying to rig the vote on the Florida abortion rights ballot initiative, and he got some help today from the Republican Supreme Court. They approved his deceptive and misleading ballot language intended to fool voters. Again, Ron, you've been out front with this news. Tell us what is going on.
Ron DeSantis hates democracy. We know that. He doesn't like it. Florida is run as an autocratic form of government where, look, anytime anybody in the legislature introduces a bill he doesn't like or tries to do something he doesn't like, he threatens them, he primaries them, he intimidates them and forces them to back down. When voters do things he doesn't like elect Democrats as prosecutors or school board members, and DeSantis doesn't like them, he removes them. So this is how DeSantis, he's very anti-democratic, and he runs the state with an iron fist. And so along comes this abortion amendment, which is on the ballot for November. He hates it. He does not want it. It would basically move abortion in Florida from 6 weeks, which is basically a total ban, to viability, to like a Roe standard, 15 weeks. He hates it. And so he started out saying a bunch of lies about it, claiming that it was the same as the California law, which it's not, and that it negates parental consent, and he started telling all these typical DeSantis lies that wasn't getting any traction. So then what he's done is this very sinister thing, which is anytime a ballot referendum has any kind of economic impact or fiscal impact where it could cost taxpayers money, that has to be next to the amendment. In other words, you have the amendment language when you go in to vote, and I've done this many times in Florida, hundreds of times, ballot initiative, and then it will have like a statement of economic impact. Many ballot initiatives have no economic impact statement, particularly ones that deal with civil rights. There's no budget money that has to be laid out to pay for it, right? And you would think like this doesn't have any fiscal impact whatsoever either. But what DeSantis does is he puts out his statement that he wants next to the abortion amendment, which is a bunch of lies and misrepresentations and misinformation, and claiming that taxpayers are going to have to pay, could maybe have to pay to fund abortions, and all this other language in there, which is very misleading about this could happen and this could happen and this could happen. In other words, it is not a fiscal impact statement at all. It's Ron DeSantis's political arguments against this amendment that he wants inside the voter booths as people are voting. So this was challenged. It went, a lower court judge overturned it and said, no, this language cannot go on the ballot because this is not legitimate fiscal language. Goes up to the Supreme Court, which is the Florida Supreme Court is all Republicans. It's all Republican appointee justices, totally controlled by all DeSantis, Rick Scott appointees. And they ruled this morning, oh no, this ballot language is fine. So now you're basically going to have voters go in and vote on this amendment with a DeSantis propaganda statement next to it.
I mean, that is an example of how undemocratic the process will become under Republicans going forward. Because, you know, we've started to talk about how if Trump wins, he'll rig the vote. And this is the type of vote rigging, as in rig the vote, as in he'll never leave office. This is the type of vote rigging. This is kind of where it starts. And you know, we often talk about the corruption of the Supreme Court, and here the Florida court is exactly the same. So that there is no fairness. There is no unbiased judiciary. And it will only snowball. And so, you know, it's important that we highlight these things because it's massive. I mean, we had a very similar thing in the UK years ago where we were given a referendum on the vote and told, do we want to switch over to, you know, from to proportional representation, from first past the post system? And it was a referendum. And again, the Conservatives laid the question out, and it was a rigged question. It was loaded. And it meant that very few people went for it, even though everyone's been campaigning for years to get rid of first past the post. And then when the referenda came up, people just didn't really know what to do because the Conservatives had written the question in such a way.
Yeah, it's sort of, we call it push polling here too, which is like, if you're a pollster and you ask a certain question, like, will you vote for this abortion amendment, even though it will result in millions more abortions and cost taxpayers billions of dollars? Yeah. You know, if you ask it that way, they will say no. But if you just ask them, should abortion be 15 weeks? They will say yes. That's basically what is happening here.
And it can be very subtle. You know, it doesn't have to be as blatant as that because, you know, there are experts in this. It's a bit like cognitive behavioral therapy. You know, there are ways in which you can almost make people choose something specific based on the questioning, auto-suggestion. It's deception, and it's happening at the highest levels. So,
there's another important point, which is there's a political reason for why he's doing this.
Right.
It's not just because he wants to stop abortion, okay? Because I don't think he really cares that much about that. What he wants to be able to do when he runs for president in 2028, he wants to be able to make as part of his case to Republicans around the country, I was the only Republican governor that stopped an abortion amendment in my states. All these other Republican governors all over, they failed. Even in Ohio, they failed. It all passed, but I stopped it. That's why he's doing this.
Okay, let's move on to a story. I mean, none of these stories really are trivial today. They're all significant. This next one is some reporting done by PBS. I was thinking, is it a slip of the tongue? Like, what is she saying? This is talking about peace negotiations between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. And this announcement was made during coverage of the DNC. I'll show the clip.
Yeah. We know that Secretary of State Blinken is over there right now working with Netanyahu. The reporting is that former President Trump is on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel, urging him not to cut a deal right now because it's believed that would help the Harris campaign.
Whoa, okay, rewind. Now, this sounds to me like classic Donald Trump. He did exactly this when it came to the bipartisan border bill, the immigration bill. He tanked it because he didn't want Joe Biden to look good. Meanwhile, we have, obviously, since October last year, we have this crazy warfare going on in Gaza, 40,000 Palestinians dead. And Antony Blinken has made 9 trips to the Middle East. He's been working round the clock, Kamala Harris as well. And a ceasefire is all they want, right, for the sake of humanity. And Donald Trump, potentially, because of his relationship with Bibi, as he loves to call him, would try and delay that till after the election because he doesn't want Biden to look good.
Well, we know that he doesn't care about the people in Gaza. We already know he could care less. If they're all killed tomorrow, he wouldn't care.
Yeah.
So obviously he has no vested interest in a ceasefire. I don't think Netanyahu, especially. I don't think he needs to be talked into it very much. Okay, I don't think he especially wants a ceasefire and a hostage release either. I think he wants a hostage release, but he doesn't want necessarily the ceasefire because look, once this war is over, I think Netanyahu's out. They're going to get rid of him. And so it's kind of in his interest to continue to prosecute this war.
Because he is also up on corruption charges in the same way that Donald Trump is facing the judiciary. So the only way they can save their skin is either to win the presidency or to stay in power.
Yeah, they're not going to move forward with that while he's prosecuting a war. So that's the thing. So yes. So, but this follows the familiar playbook, and it's not just the bipartisan border bill. Trump tried to block all the continuing resolutions on the budget. You know, he's constantly trying to stop the infrastructure bill and every bill. He's trying to block everything because he doesn't want the Biden administration to have any successes to run against him on. And this, you know, it was widely reported that once Biden dropped out, he said he has one goal left for his presidency, and that is to accomplish this, is to end the war in Gaza. That's the one thing he wanted to accomplish. And his goal was to do it before he spoke at the DNC, because he was hoping, I think, to make this announcement at the DNC. And I think Trump saw that and was aware of the impact that would have. And I think he wanted to do everything he could to stop it. And what also corroborates this is Netanyahu flew down 3 weeks ago to visit him at Mar-a-Lago, and they spent the day together. So why is Netanyahu and the Prime Minister of Israel in the middle of a war meeting with the Republican candidate for president at his house in Miami, Palm Beach? Why is he doing that? Well, now we hear that he's trying to talk Netanyahu into not making a peace deal. So the corroboration is there. The MO is there. The pattern is there. So I absolutely believe this reporting.
We should just say that both sides have denied that this has happened. Of course. But, you know, this is so serious because Donald Trump is not in elected office. He's not in the military. He is a civilian. He's also a convicted felon. And the fact that, you know, is this not a violation of the Logan Act?
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, this is different than domestic policy stuff, right? This is a different level. You can't interfere with U.S. foreign policy like this. So it is, which is why, of course, they all have to deny it. I mean, this also goes back to like Ukraine. I mean, and Zelensky. This is how Trump operates. He leverages people. He threatens people. And he does. And I probably said to Netanyahu, he probably promised Netanyahu a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
When he gets into office.
Well, because Israel relies on America. It relies on America for support, for weapons, for strategy, for backup. Netanyahu needs Trump. Trump needs Netanyahu.
May need asylum in the United States as well.
Right.
And I think, because to avoid going to prison in Israel, possibly. So I think that there's all these two shady characters who are friends are making deals between each other. And yes, it is in Trump's interest for there not to be a resolution of the conflict in Gaza. It is in his interest. And we know that the only thing Trump cares about is his interest.
I mean, this is massive, isn't it? It really is massive.
It is.
And the bigger issue, though, is that because Trump has been given this broad immunity from the Supreme Court, that he is probably of the opinion that he's immune from anything, including the Logan Act. But it doesn't work like that.
Well, he's
but
not
who's
president
going to
now.
stand up to him? I mean, is the Justice Department looking at this? Is the CIA onto this? I mean, is anybody looking or watching, or is it just you and me?
Well, that explains why they have a face-to-face meeting, because if there's phone calls, they can get intercepted.
Yeah.
Especially since, U.S. intelligence is all over what's going on in Israel.
Right.
So I think that that's why they have the face-to-face meeting. And I think that that's where this conversation probably took place. I don't think that this is something Trump's going to talk about on the phone.
It's like Trump's secret meeting with Putin at Helsinki.
Same thing.
Where the
Where
only
they handed
person
out
there was a translator.
basketball. Well, it was a soccer ball, I think it was, where
Yeah.
a soccer ball was handed over, and there was a lot of speculation that there was like something inside the soccer ball.
I mean, this is like Minority Report, only really badly done. I don't know. Okay, well, let's cheer ourselves up a little bit and talk about the DNC, because from extreme corruption and negativity, the flip side of that is the positive joy and energy that the Democratic National Convention has brought to people. You can feel it. It's palpable. And so many of the speakers have got up and they've started their speech. I was watching Hillary Clinton do her speech last night, and she was like, there's something is happening. There is a feeling. Things are changing. And it is not just a step change. It is a significant change, to the point that just seeing the sea of supporters packed into this auditorium in Chicago, they look like my America. They actually look like the people that I live with, and the people that I am related to, and the people I hang out with, and the people I see in the street. They're every size and shape and color and flavor possible. Whereas if you contrast that to the audience at the RNC, it was literally white supremacists. I mean, has that, as a former conservative Republican yourself, like, do you feel that the same thing that I feel when you see diversity and a level of inclusivity that is celebrated, or do you not get the vibes like I do?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm glad you put it in the context of as a former Republican, because this is not something like what you saw last night. You would never see at a Republican convention, whether it's the music, the diversity, all of that. Like in the past, when Republicans have tried to sort of, hey, we're big tent, we're more inclusive, which kind of George W. Bush tried to do that a little bit, and they're going to put as many black people as they can find in the audience and all that. Yeah. But it's very forced, and you could tell it's like nobody's doing it organically or naturally. And Republicans all understand that. Like, we're primarily a white party, and, it is what it is. I think we just look at the Democrats, but the Democratic Party is even more diverse than it was in the past. Like, even in the 90s, it wasn't this diverse. It's just this incredible kaleidoscope and of men, women, gay, straight, black, white, Hispanic. I mean, you name it, it's all there. And it's not contrived. It's very organic. And so I will say, like, from a personal level too, by the way, like, I'm a morning person. I get up very early, as people can tell from my Twitter account, like 5:30 a.m. tweets and stuff.
Oh, I know.
And I'm not a late person. Okay. Yeah. And I'm on the East Coast. So I know that people on, reporters were whining on the East Coast. This is very like inside baseball stuff, where a lot of us are like whining to each other on Twitter about having to stay up late. And the people that are like not in the business are just like, will you guys shut up and quit whining? I totally get it. So like after night one, which I thought was like, okay, but I was a little miffed that they pushed Biden after midnight. He's an old guy, and they're making him sitting back all for hours.
But what is the thinking behind that?
And they cut James Taylor. There wasn't thinking. Everybody went long on their speeches. Like, right. There's a lot of conspiracies that this was done on purpose to Biden and this and that. I don't believe that. No. Everybody just went long. Okay. And they pulled speakers, they cut speakers. And so that goes to like 12:30, and then so day two rolls around, and I'm just like, man, I'm tired, and I'm thinking like, I can't go through this again. And then they get to the roll call, and I'm like, roll calls are always like incredibly boring It was boring at the RNC. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go through 2 hours of roll call. The music starts and I'm just like, this is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
You know, this was the best roll call ever. It was nonstop entertainment and fun. And it just kept getting better and better with the Obamas and stuff. And, you know, whereas I thought like the first night was kind of like C+, B-, probably because of my bias having to stay up late. A+ last night. It was fantastic.
It was huge. And it was reminiscent of those early Obama speeches and, you know, talking about hope. And it was, and yes, she can this time, as opposed to yes, we can. It was very moving. One thing that both Obamas did, Michelle came on first and introduced her husband for his speech. They have really opened the taps when it comes to the criticism of Donald Trump. Whereas previously they were maybe never saying his name or referring to my predecessor or just being a little respectful but subtle about it. Now it's like the gloves are off, Ron. And I'm really pleased about that.
Yeah, you know, it was really funny. I kept checking for Trump's reaction during the speeches. And I thought Michelle has given the best speech of the convention so far. I thought Barack's was excellent. I thought the best part of Barack's speech was what he said about Biden. I thought his comments about Biden were the best of anyone so far. I thought his tribute to Biden was excellent. And I thought that was kind of needed to be, somebody needed to do that. And he was a good one to do it. So I thought that was great. Michelle's was like, you know, there were we were talking last night, like this is going to like reignite all the stuff of like, man, Michelle Obama should run for president someday. Yeah. She was that good.
Yeah. Except she doesn't want to. We should always remind people of that.
I don't think she will, but you know, it was funny, like to watch the MAGA reaction because like they were very silent. They were just like, oh, these are negative. These are, you know, all that, but not very much chatter. But then like this morning, the reaction was like, the Obamas are obsessed with Trump. They have Trump derangement syndrome. They can't stop talking about Trump. And I'm like, they haven't talked about Trump in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, they don't know how to react. They know that they got hit with some serious body blows last night. And I think they're still kind of processing it.
I saw a reel on YouTube that was put together by Sky News in the UK, and they clipped every time Biden said Trump in his speech, and they cut it all together. And they were like, why is Biden obsessed with Trump? I mean, that kind of misreporting is so unhelpful in this moment. And that's just another example of how the corporate media refuses to acknowledge how much skin they have in the game and why this precipice of democracy versus dictatorship matters. You can't make jokes about stuff like this. Is deadly serious. And that's what I got from Michelle Obama, was trying to remind people that whilst Trump is a joke, there's nothing funny about fascism.
You know, the way this works in American politics, I guess this would come across better to the Europeans, is there's a traditional way that this is done. And it's always kind of been this way, which is the person at the top of the ticket, the head person, is not the one who spends a lot of time going after the opponent. It's the surrogates. It's the people underneath. It's the vice president is the one who prosecutes the case. So typically the way these things go is like the cabinet people, the surrogates, they're the ones who blast away at the other party's candidate. And then the person at the top of the ticket comes out as the benevolent grandfather or grandma and, you know, above it all, and is uplifting and positive and all of that. That's the way these things almost always go. And that seems to be the way I would expect that Harris will not spend very much time talking about Trump.
She'd be coming out as the stepmom, though, as the mama, not as the grandmother.
Right. And I think what we're going to see, exactly right. And what we're going to see tonight is, I think you're going to have Pete Buttigieg is going to talk about the policy accomplishments of the administration tonight. And you're going to have some of the other speakers like Bill Clinton go after Trump.
Good. All right. Let's take a quick look at Michelle as she started the kind of Obama dynasty night off. Here she is.
She understands that most of us will never be afforded the grace of failing forward. We will never benefit from the affirmative action of generational wealth. If we bankrupt a business or choke in a crisis, we don't get a second, third, or fourth chance. If things don't go our way, we don't have the luxury of whining or cheating others to get further ahead. No. We don't get to change the rules so we always win. If we see a mountain in front of us, we don't expect there to be an escalator waiting to take us to the top. No. We put our heads down. We get to work. In America, we do something.
It's so important, isn't it, that people are speaking up for the plight of real Americans. Like, this is the thing that I found so moving about these speeches, was that they're able to actually talk about the America that I recognize and hopefully others do. Because, you know, my family is white and black and straight and gay and lesbian and bisexual, and that is my family.
And that's just you.
And that's just me, Ron. Appreciate that. Thank you. And you know, this idea that Republicans and MAGA Republicans especially, and here I go with my reference to Alina Hubris' Instagram account again, that they think that they are perfect, perfectly white, perfectly straight, perfectly wealthy, perfectly Instagrammable, perfectly dressed, perfectly facelifted or Botoxed or lip implanted, and perfect teeth, let's not forget the teeth, perfect hairline. And, you know, the rest of us, no disrespect to yourself, but you and me and my family and everybody else, that we don't make the grade because we are just too ordinary. And I think that for me, for voters, I mean, I don't get to vote, as we know, but for voters, I think that the DNC has reached out to regular people who don't feel, or maybe who don't wish to aspire to Alina Hubris' perfect white Instagram.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that clip that we just saw with Michelle, like, I told Asen to clip that as soon as I heard it, because I thought it was so perfectly done in terms of, like, Trump and the Republicans are always talking about DEI and, you know, migrants having it so great and getting everything, and black people and minorities and women, that, you know, everything is handed to them and all of that, when so many of these people making those accusations grew up in wealthy families. And you know, she never mentions Trump's name there, but everyone knows who she's talking about when she's talking about, you know, inheriting the wealth. He can fail when every time he loses, it's rigged. And I thought she just went to the essence of who Trump is, that this is a guy who constantly plays the victim, but he's a failure. He's inherited everything. He's had everything on a silver platter. He eats out of silver spoons, and yet he constantly whines and complains that he has it so bad. And I thought, and that everyone else has it so much better than him. And I thought she prosecuted that case better than anybody I've heard yet. You know, I thought.
Yes. Well, look, he gives his press conferences in front of his country club, you know, and claims, you know,
about cost of living.
Right. It's like, come on.
Yeah. It's like, isn't there anybody on the staff that says, you know, we're talking about cost of living here.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't do this in front of your exclusive country club.
Go to Food for Less or something. Like, stand in a parking lot. It's just not right being here in this. You know, there were columns. I mean, look like the White House. Maybe that's why he likes it, because it looks like the White House. All right, let's hear from the main man. Here he is.
From a guy whose act has, let's face it, gotten pretty stale. We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse. America's ready for a new chapter. America's ready for a better story. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
we all know that the sequel is always worse. I mean,
Another
that is
one,
a brilliant line.
Another one I ordered Asen to clip. You know, he was overwhelmed at that point and like way behind him, like, sequel, get the sequel part. You know, because
so clever.
Because the Obamas are so much better than the rest of us mere mortals at just getting to the essence in the simplest, most understandable way. In other words, I've made that same argument that he just made hundreds of times, which is talking about why a second Trump administration will be much worse than the first ones and all. They've done it on the show where I'll spend like 5 minutes doing that. And Barack does it in like 10 seconds, you know, and just in a way that people will remember better than my diatribe. So he just boiled down like so much of like what we know in our heart just in one line. And it was so perfect.
Yeah. Well, I've worked as a political speechwriter, and we call it economy of words.
Yeah.
You know, why say it in 6 sentences if you can say it in 3 or 4 words? And, you know, the sequel is always worse is a very clever way of doing that. What really shone for me is the quality of these Democrats, the quality of them as humans, their goodness, their ability to see the world as it really is and see people as they really are. And there is, you know, they're wealthy, they have a beautiful home in Hawaii, but they do not come across as elitist. And that is very clever, isn't it? It's actually, no, tell a lie, I'll rewind that. It's not clever, it's authentic. They are their authentic selves. And that's something that Trump doesn't have. And that's something that the Alina Hubris and the porcelain veneers of this world do not have. In fact, we were watching the Michelle speech last night, and my wife goes, I love the fact that she hasn't fixed her teeth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't think about that, but you're right.
And isn't that a perfect example of being your authentic self? And, you know, dentists have made a lot of money out of those kind of MAGA Republican leaders.
Well, you know, the Republicans were talking a lot this morning about how they were hypocritical to talk about that kind of stuff because of how wealthy they are now and how much money they've made writing books and speaking engaged. Ben Shapiro, people like that, Charlie Kirk, we're all talking about that this morning. But the point is, that's not how they grew up. No. I mean, this is stuff that they have earned after the fact, after he was president.
Because they've done the work.
They did the work.
Done the work.
This is the payoff.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's not like Donald Trump who inherited $400 million. This is not the same situation.
I mean, Trump refuses to work. You know, even playing golf is hard work for him. That's what he thinks is hard work. He refused to work as president, and he continues now refusing to do rallies. And even doing these press conferences and attracting the press at his venues where he doesn't have to go anywhere. It's just so lazy. And the negativity surrounding it bears no resemblance to this offering from the Democrats at the National Convention. The whole thing is joined up, and people are, despite the diversity of Democrats, because this is the other thing that is really important to remember, is that Democrats hold a wide range of views. Not everybody agrees on the same stuff, but there aren't political parties to accommodate all these views. So Democrats encompass a vast grouping of thoughts and belief systems and interests, and yet there is unity because they represent this alternative to fascism, and that is true democracy, celebrating true freedom.
You know, I really see the contrast too, like with social media, because I follow both. You know, I follow the left and the right, you know, the influencers and people like that, media. And, you know, the right is constantly personally attacking each other, you know, over not really issues, over just personal attacks and going at each other. And the slightest little thing will cause them to just burn their bridge with somebody and nuke them. And on the Democratic side, you know, what I see is there is so much, like, there's people that I follow on social media who I really respect, but I very much disagree with them on many different things. And yet I still like them. I still follow them. I still agree with them on 90% of other things, and we still get along. And so it's just like, I don't see that on the Republican side. I see like venom and hate and towards each other. And so I think that that's the key. And again, I remember when the Israel Gaza stuff, I know definitely concerned me, when it happened. Like, could this be the unraveling of all of that? But I don't think it has been. I think the worries about that have been kind of,
Well, but it's not that. It's about people know which is the right side of history.
Yeah.
People know that the death of 40,000 people is not right.
And I think
people know that.
Almost all Democrats agree with that position. And so that's the thing. We have varying variations about how far, whatever our support for Israel should go, from no support to,
but nobody
all
is
the way.
supporting what Trump wants, which is, and what Netanyahu clearly wants, which is to not rest until there isn't a single Arab left in the region.
That's right.
And that's the difference. Okay, listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about the Latino vote and how Latinos are represented at the DNC. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. If, like me, you've got culinary taste but won't entertain restaurant prices, Cook Unity is the first chef-to-use service delivering locally sourced meals from award-winning chefs right to your door every week. And it's cheaper than other delivery options. Go to cookunity.com/uncovered or enter code UNCOVERED before checkout for 50% off your first week. Cook Unity is a great way to support local chefs and suppliers. Every meal is handcrafted by chefs and made in local micro kitchens, not large production facilities. Your food arrives fresh, never frozen, in packaging that keeps meals fresh in the fridge for up to 7 days. You can pick as few as 4 or as many as 16 meals per week. There are hundreds of dishes to choose from, and the menu is updated constantly. There's options for 7 different dietary preferences. Menus are posted 2 weeks in advance, so you have plenty of time to choose. Experience chef-quality meals every week delivered right to your door. Go to cookunity.com/uncovered or enter code UNCOVERED before checkout for 50% off your first week. That's 50% off your first week by using code UNCOVERED or going to cookunity.com/uncovered. If there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking, it's with ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. Pre-Alcohol is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Vacations, weddings, birthdays, and reunions, there's so much going on. Get the most out of your summer plans by stocking up on pre-alcohol now. Go to zbiotics.com/uncovered to get 15% off your first order when you use Uncovered at checkout. Pre-alcohol is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/uncovered and use the code UNCOVERED at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Okay, back to now, and back to our coverage of the DNC. We also had an appearance from Ana Navaro. She's on The View normally, isn't she? She's like a TV personality. Tell us a little bit about her before I play the clip. She talks about her own story fleeing Nicaragua.
This is really, really important. Something else I told Ace in the clip when I heard her say it, because I thought it was so important for us to put out there. Because being in Florida for as long as I have, I watched how the Republican Party messaged to a lot of Latino voters. In other words, like, they always traditionally went Democrat. Migrants would come here, except for Cubans, but migrants would come here and they would always tend to register as Democrats, vote Democrats, etc. But Republicans sort of figured out a formula 10, 15 years ago to win a lot of them over. And that is to try and paint the Democratic Party as socialists, Marxists, communists. So in other words, the governments that you fled in Latin America, whether it's Maduro or Castro or whoever, they want to make this country just like the people that you left. They want to turn it into a Marxist communist country. So when they get here from people who don't maybe know the American political system that well, they're a little naive about what's going on. They get the picture of like, that party is the communists and we're the freedom party. We're the capitalist party. So you should be with us. And that has largely worked. I think Democrats were asleep at the switch. I think they really did take a lot of the Latino vote for granted for a long time. And Republicans were doing all of that messaging on Spanish radio stations. They were buying up Spanish radio stations, which were very cheap. And they caught Democrats napping on this issue. So here I thought Anna, for the first time, she just did the best job of anybody I've heard at just countering that and just saying to those people, you are being lied to. Let me explain why they're lying to you about this. And I thought it was just so powerful that I said, this needs to be clipped. And this is what Democrats need to be saying to Latino voters.
Let's be serious. Donald Trump and his minions call Kamala a communist. I know communism. I fled communism from Nicaragua when I was 8 years old. I don't take it lightly. And let me tell you what communist dictators do. And it's never just for one day. They attack the free press. They call them the enemy of the people, like Ortega does in Nicaragua. They put their unqualified relatives in cushy government jobs so they can get rich of their positions, like the Castros do in Cuba. And they refuse to accept legitimate elections when they lose and call for violence to stay in power, like Maduro is doing right now in Venezuela. Now, you tell me something. Do any of those things sound familiar? Is there anybody running for president who reminds you of that? And I know one thing, it's not Kamala Harris. That is not the America we love. It's not the land of freedom we treasure. Last night, we heard President Biden say that he loves his job, but he loves his country more. Every American needs to love our country more. Every American has the duty to put our country first. Country first before party. Country first before political ambition. Country first before habit. And in this election, putting country first means one thing and one thing only: voting for Kamala Harris.
This is a message that even Republicans and traditional conservatives would be foolish to ignore. She laid out the similarities between Donald Trump and these dictators of the past and present in a clearer way than any of us really have been able to, by nature of her experience fleeing that very regime. It was very powerful, Ron.
It was the best I've ever heard anybody make this case. And the best political messaging is targeted. In other words, it's not a billboard is the worst form of political messaging, right? Because you're just throwing up a slogan and it's being put in front of eyeballs of 90% of people who maybe not even agree with it or aren't reachable or whatever. The best is when you target a specific message to a specific group of people in a way that connects with their lives. It's an art. People go to school for it. It's very difficult to learn. It's as a campaign manager, as a campaign consultant. And she did it to the essence of the Latino voter. She is targeting that Latino voter who has been seduced by Republicans into believing that the Democratic Party is just like Castro and Maduro, when in fact, the exact opposite is true. Donald Trump is far more like those people than anybody in the Democratic Party.
I made a video the other day about Trump, trying to refer to Kamala as a communist. And the irony is that Donald Trump is on the side of Russia. He is Vladimir Putin's best friend. if you want to talk about historical communism, if you want to talk about the fact that Trump chooses Russia over Ukraine in that conflict, if you want to talk about the fact that he has befriended all of these dictators and of these autocrats because he finds common purpose with them. He has no interest in the social democracies that are the American allies. And that tells you all you need to know about Donald Trump.
If Maduro praised Trump and said that he's the greatest guy in the world and offered to let Trump build a casino in Venezuela, he would love Maduro. That's the bottom line.
Right.
Like, this is what we know. The problem is so many Latino voters don't believe that. They just have been unfortunately brainwashed, and people like Navaro can make that case to them a hell of a lot better than we can, which is why the Democratic Party, Jamie Harrison, is doing such a brilliant job. And I'm not on the payroll, man. I'm not kissing his butt or anything. I'm just saying, like, they're doing a masterful job with this convention.
I was reading about McMaster's book that just came out that talks about how he believed that Putin was taking advantage of Donald Trump's insecurities by complimenting him and using him and manipulating him. And it's so funny, isn't it, how all of us can see it. It doesn't take a military person to have to expose it. It is so blatant, in the same way that you don't have to be a clinician to know that Donald Trump is mentally ill. And the projection, so referring to Kamala as the communist when it's him, it's all of him, all of his policies line up with dictators in history. Talking of which, and military and everything that goes with that, this Medal of Honor line that Trump has been peddling recently, where he got into a situation where he said, well, the Presidential Medal of Freedom is better than the Medal of Honor because at least you're alive, whereas the Medal of Honor invariably is for dead people. And obviously we know he doesn't respect dead people or people who have been captured, as we know. This was another expose on Donald Trump's vile views of people in service, people who have given their lives, the families of people who've given their lives. He just doesn't get it. Now, you as a former military person yourself, maybe you can shed a little light on this, because he was given the opportunity to kind of retract these comments, and he just doubled down on them.
There were Republicans, Trump voters, who were outraged by this, who were upset. Yeah. There were veterans, Republicans all over the country who were shocked, who liked Trump, who were shocked at what he said, because they didn't believe that he said the suckers and losers comments, because John Kelly's never gone on camera and given an interview. So, they just believe that's fake news. That's like the Atlantic making up a story, or Jake Tapper, making up a story. If they can't see Trump saying it with their own eyes, then it's not true. And so here he comes out and he basically says the same kind of stuff at a rally on video. He says, I think that the Presidential Medal of Freedom that I give out, that he was talking about Miriam Adelson, gave him $130 million. Right. And that's why he gave her the Medal of Freedom, that was better because, she's not like a combat wounded vet where he said you can't enjoy the medal. Enjoy it. You can't enjoy it because you might be in a wheelchair, or you might have your leg amputated, or might even be dead. So, it's not as good as a Presidential Medal of Freedom. When, for one, no veteran looks at medals that way. Like we don't look at them like you win them. You get them for like what you've just been through. You're not out there trying to win medals. Only idiots. People who are trying to win medals die. They don't survive because those guys are idiots. But this is the way that Trump looks at it. Then you add that together with all this past statements he's made about how he always wanted a Purple Heart, trashing John McCain for getting captured behind enemy lines. And I just say to the Trump people, okay, you don't believe the suckers and losers stuff from Normandy that he said that? But what about all this other stuff, which is basically the exact same thing, and it's on tape? That doesn't cause you to believe the suckers and losers? How much more evidence do you need that this guy has no respect for veterans and does not honor their service and simply uses vets for political props for his own gain?
Here's the clip.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's very... And they're rated equal.
But this plays into what I was saying about this idea that a MAGA Republican is perfect, that they are unsullied, they don't have limbs missing or are in wheelchairs. They are perfect white Christian specimens. And because let's not forget those two immortal words, bone spurs, where, of course, Donald Trump's father paid a doctor who was renting property from him to write Donald Trump a sick note so he didn't have to serve in the military. I mean, this stuff is as low as it goes.
The whole point of like the suckers and losers stuff and him not wanting to be around disabled vets and wheelchairs and stuff is just that. Like, he doesn't understand. His whole point is like, why would you go in the military, give your life, give an arm, give a leg, get shot when, you know, what's in it for you? That's his worldview. Whereas like vets, people in the military, we don't think like that. We don't think like, I want something in return. We don't join the military for those reasons. We do it out of sense of obligation. For me, it was like, I felt like every young, able-bodied man should serve their country in some way. Doesn't have to be in the military. It could be some other way, whether it's as a teacher or Peace Corps or whatever it is, as a nurse, that everyone should serve in some way and give at least 4 years of their life in service. And that's why I did it. And if I got hurt or wounded or whatever, that was part of the deal. Like, we don't view it like, what's in it for me? Like, no vet looks at it that way. And that's why, you know, it just sickens me that vets get fooled by this guy.
I don't think they are going to be voting for him in the numbers that maybe they have previously. I honestly think that now that there is, you know, there have been so many of these exposures. And let's not forget, for me, the one that really exposed Donald Trump is exactly the same, was at 9/11, when he phones into the radio station or the TV channel and he says, well, now my building is probably the tallest, or is now the tallest building in Manhattan, because of the Twin Towers collapsing. I mean, that is how
was his first reaction.
Right. That is how he saw that act of terrorism as an opportunity for him to increase the size of his building and his portfolio. And then, of course, he backtracked like the next day and pretended that he'd been down there to help out with the firemen, and it was completely untrue.
He made sure to get himself photographed down there.
Yeah,
the next day.
Which
they put out every 9/11 every year.
Yeah,
they put out those photos.
Yeah,
you know.
So I mean, that's what we're dealing with. And if you don't know who Trump is, then you're kind of missing the whole point of his sad, plan to get reelected. He will literally prevent a ceasefire in Gaza. He will literally think that the Presidential Medal of Freedom is better because it's got the word presidential in it, and he gave it. He is just the worst example of humanity, if indeed he falls into that category.
Yeah, so what he's saying is like a guy who jumped on a grenade in Afghanistan to save his buddies and maybe got his arm blown off or something. That's not as valuable. That's not as good as Miriam Adelson getting an award from him for giving him $100 million to his PAC. Yeah. I mean, that's what he just said. Yeah. And I don't know how any Republican, first, for me, like I always said, like people ask me, like, what was the deal breaker for me with Trump? It was what he said about McCain as a veteran. When he said that, I was like, I was kind of like, okay, I'll listen to him. I never liked him, but I'll give him a chance. He said that about McCain, and I'm out.
I
And
prefer
it's just
people
like,
that don't get
how do these
captured.
bets still? How are they
Yeah.
still hanging around this guy? You know?
Well, because it's a cult, Rod, and because it's a mental illness, and it is on a national level. And, you know, the worse Trump is, the base are drawn to him more because it makes them feel better about themselves. As the more terrible he can be, it gives them license to be terrible themselves. That's the way I see it. Got another weird Trump clip here talking about, I mean, you posted suggesting that, or asint posted suggested that he really can't stay on message. Let's take a look at this clip.
Her father is, as you know, a Marxist professor, and he obviously did a good job. But this is where she's coming from. And, you know, you see her now with a smile, and she's gotten rid of the laugh over the last couple of days. I don't know. I haven't seen her laugh. They've told her, don't laugh, please. But I'll bet inside she was laughing last night when she saw the way Joe Biden left, because that was a coup. That was.
What is he even talking about?
See, like, this is really important. I mean, here's the point. Like, so he's been giving all these deranged rally speeches, right? So the campaign is trying desperately to craft messages for him and to get him to stay off. They're trying to get him off Hannibal Lecter and windmills and whales and all these crazy ass stories that he likes to tell at rallies, right?
Yeah.
And they get like his rally crowd people, his frequent flyers, egg him on to do those ridiculous stories, the female weightlifter stuff,
the snake,
and so they come up with this plan. It was so funny to watch this unfold.
Yeah,
we're like, okay, we're going to do 3 small events. They're going to be in small venues, and we're going to be about one subject, and we're going to keep the old man disciplined, right? So no rally crowds. You know, it's the first one is going to be about the economy. Then the next one's going to be about crime, which was that one supposed to be about crime. And then today is about foreign policy. We're going to give them a tight script. And you know, there's only going to be like 20 people there. The one you just saw, it was in a sheriff's office. There was like 20 cops there. And you could see the sheriff and his deputy behind him. And I'm watching these things and he can't do it. He refuses to stick to the script. You just saw there, I mean, 90% of that speech was supposed to be all about crime. 90% of it had nothing to do with crime.
But he's so disconnected. This is the thing. It's almost like, and this is why I keep repeating, that he's rigging the election, that there is a plan for the election not to be certified and to challenge the election and have the Supreme Court install him as you know, and I know I sound crazy, but just you wait. That is why, to me, he doesn't have the energy for campaigning, is because he has been convinced by someone, probably Kevin Roberts at the Heritage Foundation or something, don't worry, we've got the election sorted, it's going to be fine. And even Newsmax now is saying that Trump is boring. Let's take a look.
Unlike the whistle-stop tours of years past when people heard from a candidate maybe once, today they often hear elements of the stump speech dozens of times, and it frankly gets boring. That's why long speeches and hour-long rallies don't win elections. What makes a campaign exciting is when a candidate says or does something unexpected. That's the opportunity for Mr. Trump now. How many Americans know the Donald Trump who loves music, everything from opera to Sinatra to Metallica? We know Mr. Trump plays golf, a lot of it. What's his secret to playing the game so many people struggle to master for decades? Believe me, I'm one of them. Whatever happened to Grandpa Trump? I loved Grandpa Trump. We saw him at the convention, a smiling former president, one grandchild on his lap, another on stage, telling the nation about the Donald Trump most of us have never met, the one who greets his grandkids with bear hugs and kisses, picking them up in the air and making them laugh, the one who prints out a good report card to show folks, the one who's so incredibly proud of his children. Mr. Trump has certainly articulated his understanding of the biblical underpinnings of our constitutional freedoms. He recently discussed his faith with Elon Musk. More interviews about that would be compelling.
Okay, so he's lost Newsmax now. Tell us why.
I mean, you know, I was the first time I saw that, I was hysterically laughing, when I clipped that. I was just like tears streaming down my cheeks. I was laughing that hard because like this is the classic thing with right-wingers, Trump fans, they correctly diagnose the problem, okay, who are just not crazy cult. Like, he's not crazy, but he's almost crazy. So he correctly diagnoses the problem, which is you've been given the same friggin' speech for 7 years to the same people, and it's tired, it's boring, it's stale, and this is not winning us the election. So, but then like his solution is what is comical, which is like, oh, Trump, you need to talk about how much you love your grandkids and how much you love music, and the kicker, your Christian faith. And he brought up the conversation he had with Musk, which, if anybody saw the clip of them two talking about Christianity, you are talking about two people who aren't Christians, who don't believe in God, who are very well aware that their fans do, and they're trying to like play this game with them where they're trying to pretend that they're Christian, but neither one can like knows anything about the faith or the Bible or anything else. And so he's telling them to do more of that. More like, yeah, that's a great idea. Have Trump talk about religion and how much, and Bible passages. That'll really work, right?
Well, they've just got the wrong candidate. I mean, that's what this boils down to, right? It's like you just pick another
George
candidate.
W. Bush back.
Yeah, Mike Pence will do that for you.
Yeah, Mike Pence.
Right.
This is not who Donald Trump is. So that's the delusional part, is like they want him to like become this idea of who they think he is, but he even he understands, I can't do that, man.
But this all goes to what we were saying earlier about the inauthenticity of the Trump campaign, that everything is faked. The whole like, oh, here's a black woman in Chick-fil-A who's a big fan of Donald Trump. No, she's on the payroll. Like this constant need for performative politics where nothing is what it seems. And whatever Donald Trump says, he's got an ulterior motive. It's the inconsistency also of their messaging. And, all of these little things added up are going to be the reason that they lose the election, in my opinion. Provided everyone goes out to vote, of course. Let's not forget that. And so, he lives in this bubble where he's told that he is all powerful and that everybody loves him. And as we know, I saw a clip of Piers Morgan trying to interview him the other day, and Piers Morgan started, not in a great way, by saying, now look, you say the election was stolen. I don't believe it was. And then Trump just gets up and leaves, and he's like, I'm not doing this interview. This is how they've protected Donald Trump from reality. That is why when they see the DNC and they see the colors and the flavors of the faces that are celebrating Kamala Harris, they don't recognize it. In fact, Eric Trump or Don Trump Jr. wrote, this is unwatchable. It's unwatchable because it looked like America for the first time.
Yeah. When a perfect example of that would be his suburban women problem.
Yes.
Which is, he did it again this week where he goes, they're always telling me that suburban women don't like me, right? So what he's saying is all of his advisors, all of them, Wiles, LaCivita, Miller, they're all saying like, you have to stop with these misogynist stories. Like you're killing. Look, we lost 2020 because of women.
Yeah.
Women is the demographic that cost us the election. We got creamed, and you got to stop doing this. You got to stop talking about Kamala's hair and her jewelry and her makeup and all this. But or trashing women reporters based on their looks or whatever, or talking about Megyn Kelly's period. Like, this is the kind of stuff that you need to stop doing. So what does Trump do? He says, they keep telling me that suburban women don't like me. And what does he say? He says, I don't agree with that. I think they do like me.
But it's the fact that he says the quiet stuff out loud, Ron. Like he's telling people that his advisors have told him that he needs to do better with women. And so
he doesn't agree.
He doesn't agree, but he shouldn't have said any of that stuff. No. He should have just corrected the issue. And he started doing that as well with the weird stuff, with Kamala and Tim talking about Donald Trump as being weird. It's really affected him. But instead of ignoring it, he can't because he has no inner monologue. So he's like, they say I'm weird. I don't think I'm weird. Do I look weird? And it's so blatant childish and transparent. His insanity, his mindlessness, his empty vessel brain is so transparent. It is on full show. He doesn't have the ability to hold on to any information. And that's my concern with national secrets and stolen documents and nuclear codes. I mean, like, this guy shouldn't be allowed near anything, not even a shopping list.
Right.
In a store that is rapidly selling out, right? He is a disaster for national security and for prosperity.
When the weird stuff, I know we're running long here, but you made a point that I want to hit on, which is like when the weird stuff all got rolled out, and I was so enthusiastic about it, saying, because I've been calling for this for a long time for them to go this way, and the Harris campaign fully embraced it, and I was very excited, and because I understand Trump, and I understand how that's going to get to him, and it's going to get him off his game and rattle him. And so what happens is, I think a lot of the Democrats were like, they were totally buying into it. They were like, yeah, this is it. This is the way to go. But yet you had this small segment of like the old Clintonistas, the old Bill Clinton people, the old guard from the 90s who are like, I don't get this. I don't think we should be going down this road. And I'm just like, shut up.
Yeah.
Go away.
Yeah.
Get off MSNBC. Yeah. Like, we don't want to hear from you people anymore. Like, go away. You're wrong. You don't get Trump. You never have. Let us beat him for you.
I haven't watched any of those channels for like 3 years.
Right? I
just
man.
won't have them on. And even if there's like major breaking news, I'm not going to put the news on. Are you kidding me? The Fox News now is clutching at straws. Jesse Waters says that if Harris becomes president, she will eat too many Doritos and gain a lot of weight.
Jesse, is this the largest crisis you've ever seen a campaign face?
I mean, this is like Obama's tan suit. I don't even know. We should just pre-impeach. But Jessica, she did explain why she likes Doritos. She said after she found out Trump won in 2016, she sat there with like a big family-sized bag of Doritos and ate the whole thing.
Yeah.
She obviously eats her feelings. And when she experiences anxiety, she puts a lot of food in her mouth. I'm worried if she's elected commander-in-chief, she's going to become so anxious, she's going to end up looking like Walls.
Okay, the woman vote, again, coming home for the Republicans.
No, that's not what I said. That's what people told
I learned two things. One,
Yeah. He tries to walk it back at the end. Jessica did a wonderful job. I mean, Jessica cut right to the point.
Yeah.
Which is, there you guys go again. This is why women don't vote for you.
Yeah.
And he thinks he's being funny. It's not funny.
Nobody finds that funny. Men or women.
MAGA does.
MAGA, right. And this is it. MAGA should stand for misogynistic. We could come up with a whole bunch of...
asshole, maybe.
Yeah, I knew that one was coming. I
Grumpy.
I'd leave that one for you. Let's talk quickly about the Taylor Swift phenomenon that happened last week. I made a video about it. Wasn't last week. Was it earlier? Wasn't it? Earlier this week. Where Donald Trump posted or reposted these images of Swifties, these Taylor Swift fans, that were AI, that they were artificially intelligence generated, that looked like that they were Swifties for Trump, when of course they weren't even close. I'm putting it up on screen now for those who are listening on the audio podcast. And he posted it with the phrase, I accept, because there's like Taylor Swift dressed like Uncle Sam. Taylor wants you to vote for Donald Trump. I accept, he writes. I mean, not only is this obviously completely underhand, is this not illegal to start, using other people's images and in this way for the purposes of electioneering?
Taylor, yes. The other people are just AI.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think Taylor Swift clearly could file a lawsuit if she wanted to. She probably doesn't, but she could. Because I just think she doesn't want to get involved in all that controversy.
Yeah. But she will come out for Kamala at some point, won't she?
Yeah, I think she will. Yeah. But this is and I know that there are some Democrats who think she'll stay on the sidelines this time. I don't. But look, this is what we talked about. This is what's going on with Trump, because Truth Social is a big factor here, and so is Don Jr. He never listened to Don Jr. before, and he didn't have Truth Social before. But now he has both. He does listen to Junior, and Junior is constantly feeding him stuff. Junior has his ear. It used to be like he would listen to Ivanka and people like those people are out. Like Ivanka, Jared, he listens to Junior now, and Junior is constantly feeding him these memes and these ridiculous stuff that Junior finds out of the fever dreams and fever swamps of right-wing social media. He gives it to his dad. The thing is like it's one thing for like the kid Junior to play around on the internet and social media with right-wing memes and garbage, like no one cares. But when he gives it to his dad, who's a presidential candidate, and then he puts it out, it becomes a big deal. And this happens. We've documented it time and time again.
Because there's no filter.
There's no filter. Stuff goes, and it probably drives his campaign consultants absolutely bonkers. That he, Trump is constantly putting out stuff that Junior is giving him.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Barron is also giving him stuff, because of
he
course
is.
There was that podcast that he did, that kind of weird white supremacist podcast that he went on, and that was a Barron idea.
Laura Loomer feeds him stuff all the time. All these fringy people, and it goes right out through his True Social account, and it constantly gets him in trouble.
We should just mention, talking of Truth Social and the tanking stock price and everything that goes with that, but he has been like shitposting at all hours, and it's almost like a barometer for his mental health. And I mean, Jesse Waters mentioned Kamala eating her feelings, highly offensive. But Donald Trump's feelings, I mean, I'm sure he is eating his feelings, but in addition to that, he is posting a stream of consciousness. So if he's watching the TV, which is all he seems to really do, and sees stuff that he doesn't like, then he ramps up the anger and the fury on his Truth Social timeline. And for people like you who use it as a barometer, it really is a window into his mindset.
Yeah, and it's why, I'll know, I can almost feel when certain things are happening, I got to go to Truth Social because Trump's going to post something in about 10 minutes, And invariably he does, and invariably it's bad. So
what's that machine that measures the earthquake with a little pen? It reminds me of that. He is an earthquake.
Undisciplined, very
undisciplined. Yeah,
and that's a problem with having a president like that. You can't have an impulsive president. You just can't.
It would be remiss of me not to post one photo from Alina Hubris' Instagram, because I often mention it, and as you know, I am slightly obsessed with it. This is her posting with 157 days left until Kamalanomics. I'm out here learning to catch my own food just in case. And I mean, this is her on a super yacht by the looks of it, isn't it?
Yep.
I mean, this is another example of how out of touch, how distanced these people are. And it seems that if she's not making speeches or defending Donald Trump, she lives the life of Riley.
Yeah, that's why we follow her Instagram, because she's constantly traveling. She's supposed to be the legal spokesperson for Trump.
Yeah.
All the court cases are on hold, right?
Yes.
So she's not at outside courthouses. Like the plan was for her to be outside all these courthouses doing press conferences. But thanks to the Supreme Court, that's not happening. So what is she doing? She's collecting millions of dollars, several $1 million. Last we heard, she's been paid over $3 million. That was a few months ago.
Wow.
And she's traveling the country. She's traveling the country with Trump, not Melania. And, and she's posting all this stuff about her birthday party was in the Caribbean. She was all over. She's all over the place. And I like to put that stuff out because I want Trump supporters to see that, they're making all this money, giving all these donations, and this is where your money's going, number one. So I want them to see that. And number two, she's here complaining about cost of living while she is on a yacht, in Florida or wherever in the Caribbean, California. She was in California a couple of days ago. She was in Beverly Hills a couple of days ago doing a video about how tough everything is.
So tough on Rodeo Drive. Yeah.
And it's they're so disconnected. They're so out of touch with just mainstream average Americans. They're so disconnected. But, they get the positive feedback from the cult,
Yeah. It's a self-perpetuating problem, isn't it? That they just keep feeding themselves and only themselves. All right, we have to finish, but I just want to play this clip of Mike Lindell, who claims that he's going to shave off his moustache and he's going to put on a disguise to go undercover at the DNC convention. Here he is.
I'm going, you think, Ben, you go in incognito. I'm going in. I'm going to go in incognito. I'm going to be shaving my mustache, everybody. I've only done that one time in my life. Wow. And that was when I played John Belushi in some skit. And, but we're going to be doing that. You can check it out. FrankSpeech.com, everybody. Go there, check it out, and you're going to see all the setup when I do it. And by the way, you won't recognize me then.
All right.
Can't wait for that, Ron. That's going to be so much fun and so exciting to not recognize Mike Lindell ever again.
This is a hoax. Okay, he's not going to do this, by the way. He keeps talking about it because the thing is like he knows that mainstream media stopped listening to him and stopped putting him on TV, like because it's the same old broken record stuff. And so he came up with this idea. I'll tell everybody I'm going to shave my mustache. And so that's going to get him some press coverage and some media. But I went to the page where he's supposed to have the video of him shaving his mustache, and he's just asking for money, and he wants you to pay $2 for a subscription. But I don't think he's going to do it. He's got one more day. He's got today and tomorrow. He keeps saying every day, today's the day I'm going to do it. I think he's going to come out on the end and go, ha ha, I clowned you all. I just used that to get media coverage.
You see, that's what MAGA have to offer. Meanwhile, the Democrats are talking about women and having body autonomy and rights and freedoms and the things that really matter in America. And, tonight, Bill Clinton is taken to the stage and he's going to rinse Donald Trump, aside from, talking about all the positives that Kamala Harris has to offer. It's going to be a very interesting week. Midas Touch will have full coverage, of course, of these major speeches on the Midas Touch YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out MidasTouch.com and see all of the news stories as they break, courtesy of Ron Filipkowski and the team. Ron, we have to finish, but, another essential conversation. Sorry we ran a little long, but I don't want to leave anything out. And if you want to download the audio podcast, you can do that later on tonight from wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to watch this again, just rewind and share and comment once we've finished. Thank you, Ron. See you next week.
All right. See you next week.